The penthouse occupied the entire 53rd floor of the Halcyon Tower, and Elena Ward had designed every inch of it to perform a single function: to make people feel small, not cruelly, not consciously. She had simply learned, somewhere between her 24th birthday and her first board meeting, that space was a language, and the people who commanded the most space were the ones everyone listened to. So she had bought the floor. She had removed the interior walls. She had installed floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides. And she had furnished the place with the specific kind of restraint that cost more than excess ever could. Low furniture, clean lines, a color palette that existed somewhere between white and the memory of white. It was beautiful. It was also, at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, completely silent. Elena stood at the window with a glass of water she hadn't touched and watched the rain come down on the city below. 40 stories of lit windows, thousands of people living their small, interconnected lives. And from up here they were dots, suggestions of lives. She found it calming, usually. Tonight, it felt like looking at something through glass she couldn't break. She set the water down on the kitchen counter, the sound of it too loud in the silence, and walked back to her desk. The second monitor was still open to the security audit summary she'd been reviewing since 9. Her chief security officer, Warren Briggs, had flagged it that afternoon with a note she was still trying to interpret: recommend internal review before external disclosure. Some access patterns need context. It was the word context that bothered her. Warren had worked for Callaway Ward Systems for 6 years. He was efficient, thorough, and had precisely the kind of impersonal loyalty that Elena preferred in people who handled sensitive information. He did not use words like context when he meant something straightforward. She opened the audit file again. 17 pages of system access logs, time-stamped and color-coded. She was not a technical person. She had built her company on knowing which technical people to hire, but she understood patterns, and the pattern she was seeing in the login data made something cold settle in her chest. Multiple high-level access events between 2 and 4 a.m. The same credentials, repeatedly, in a window when the office was empty. Her credentials. She had never logged in at 3 a.m. in her life. Her phone lit up on the desk. A message from Warren. Building security system running diagnostics tonight. May experience minor interruptions. Nothing to be concerned about. She read it twice. Then she went to the window again, and this time the city below looked different. Less like a view, more like a distance she couldn't cross. The building that Daniel Hayes lived in was 11 blocks north and 49 floors down. It was a good building, not fashionable, not expensive, but solid. The kind of building that had been constructed in the 1970s by people who believed a building's job was to keep weather outside and people comfortable inside, and had done exactly that without apology for 50 years. The elevator sometimes required persuasion. The lobby smelled like old carpet and the particular cleanness of places that are mopped every single day. Daniel's apartment was on the 4th floor. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that opened onto a living space just large enough for a couch, a coffee table, and the ongoing territorial dispute between Lily's art supplies and Daniel's shoes. At 11:47 p.m., Lily was asleep in her room with a slight fever and the determined expression of a child who had argued convincingly against going to bed early and then fallen asleep the moment her head touched the pillow. Daniel had checked on her 3 times in the past hour. Her breathing was even. Her forehead was warm, but not alarming. He sat on the couch with a cold cup of tea and a technical manual he was not actually reading, and waited for the specific quality of silence that would tell him she was sleeping deeply enough that he could sleep too. His phone was on the cushion beside him. Not because he expected calls. Habit. Daniel Hayes did not talk much about what he had done before moving to this apartment. Before Lily was the primary organizing principle of his daily life. When neighbors asked, he said security consulting, which was accurate the way a photograph is accurate. It captured the shape of something without communicating its weight. He had spent 9 years working in private sector threat assessment, high-risk extractions, infrastructure vulnerability, the kind of work that required a person to be able to look at a situation and identify, very quickly and very calmly, every possible way it could go wrong. He had been good at it. He had been good at it the way some people are good at things that cost them completely, and at a price they only understand later. When his wife Claire died, he had understood the price. He had left the work. He had moved Lily to a school she liked. He had learned to make pancakes in 4 different shapes and to braid hair with the specific tension that didn't cause headaches, and he had rebuilt his life around the small daily architecture of being present for a child who needed him. He did not miss the work. Most nights, his phone rang at 1:03 a.m. Unknown number. The area code was local. He looked at it for 1 ring, 2, and then answered because he always answered unknown numbers, since Lily had started at her new school and there were 17 different administrative extensions he hadn't yet memorized. "Hello," he said. What came through was not a school administrator. It was a woman's voice, very controlled and very close to not being controlled, in that particular territory that Daniel recognized immediately. The voice of someone who never asked for help trying to ask for help. I'm sorry. I don't know who you are, but this was the only. My other lines aren't. A breath. Something is wrong with my building. I need help. Daniel set down the tea. What's your situation? He said. Not a question, a prompt. My security system, someone has been. The cameras are going offline, one by one. I called building security, and no one answered. I called my driver. I called another breath, sharper. There are sounds in the hall. I don't know if I might be overreacting. You're not, Daniel said. Are you behind a locked door? Yes, I'm in my study, but the main door lock is electronic, and the panel went dark about 20 minutes ago. Address. A pause. He understood the pause. She was weighing whether to trust a stranger with her location at 1 a.m. It was a reasonable calculation. I have no way to reach anyone else, she said. And he could hear in those words everything she wasn't saying. That this was not a woman accustomed to having no options. I know, he said. Address. She gave it to him. He was already on his feet, moving toward the hall closet. Don't open your door, he said. Put something solid between you and it if you can. Stay on the line. He set the phone on the shelf while he pulled on his jacket, then picked it back up. I'm leaving now. 12 minutes. You don't know she started. I know, he said again, quietly, and ended the call. He wrote 4 words on the notepad on the kitchen counter, neighbor. Emergency. Back soon, and slid it under Mrs. Petrov's door across the hall. Because Mrs. Petrov had a key and would check on Lily if she heard anything before he was back. Then he walked to the elevator, and then he was outside in the rain, and then he was moving. The Halcyon Tower's lobby security was a 22-year-old named Garrett, who was watching a basketball game on his personal tablet. With the specific concentration of someone who has made a professional calculation that nothing ever happens at 1 a.m. in a luxury residential building, he looked up when the man in the dark jacket came through the revolving door. Sir, visiting hours. I'm here for Ward on 53, Daniel said. He was already at the elevator bank. She called me. You can verify. Garrett looked at his console, and then looked at the board where the camera feeds were displayed, and noticed for the first time that 6 of the upper floor feeds were showing static. Sir, I'm going to need to, but Daniel had already pressed the button, and the elevator door was opening, and Garrett looked at the camera board again with the specific expression of a person watching a situation become much more complicated than he was prepared for. Elena heard the elevator. She had pushed the oak-side table against the study door, not because it would stop anyone, but because the resistance it would provide would give her approximately 2 seconds of warning, and 2 seconds of warning was something. She had her phone in her hand, and she had called 911 4 minutes ago, and been told officers were en route, estimated 12 minutes in current conditions. The elevator opened with a soft chime. She pressed herself against the wall beside the window. Footsteps in the hall, unhurried, not the heavy, random sound of someone searching. Precise. Purposeful. Moving directly toward her, she picked up the heaviest thing on her desk, a glass award. Some industry recognition she had never found a meaningful place to display and held it. A knock. 3 times, evenly spaced. Miss Ward. A man's voice, quiet. The same voice from the phone. It's Hayes. I need you to step back from the door. She didn't move. The lock on your main entry is compromised. The voice continued. Still quiet. Still with that quality she had noticed on the phone. Not calm exactly, but oriented. There's a secondary access point in your service corridor that I need to check. I'm going to make some noise. Don't be alarmed. She heard something that might have been a panel opening, a brief electronic sound. Then silence. Then the knock again. All right, he said. Open the door. She moved the table. She opened the door. The man standing in the hallway was not what she had assembled in her mind during the 12-minute wait. She had expected something rougher, the kind of person who materializes in emergencies tended, in her experience, to look like emergencies themselves. Broad and loud, and marked by their function. Daniel Hayes was of average height, lean rather than imposing, with the kind of stillness she associated with people who were conserving something. He was wet from the rain. He was looking past her into the room, a quick methodical scan, and then he looked at her directly. Brown eyes, completely steady. Are you hurt? No. Anyone else in the apartment? No. He nodded and moved past her into the study, not touching anything, just looking. Your main entry was relocked from the inside approximately 4 minutes ago, he said. His back to her as he examined the window panel. Whoever it was, they were already in the building. That's not possible, she said automatically. The access system requires administrator override, he said, used from inside your network. Whoever did this has high-level access to your building's integrated security platform. She stared at him. Who are you? He turned from the window. Hayes. I told you. That's a name, not an answer. Something shifted in his expression, not irritation, more like recognition. He was quiet for a moment, the specific silence of someone deciding how much to say. I used to work in private threat assessment, he said. I don't anymore, but I know what I'm looking at. And what are you looking at? He glanced at the desk, at the audit file still open on the second monitor. Then he looked at her with an expression that was, she realized, careful. A setup, he said. Can I look at that? He sat at her desk without touching the keyboard and read the audit file the way she had read it, scanning for patterns, not pausing to interpret individual entries. He was faster than she was. He had the same quality she had noticed in the best technical hires she'd ever made. The ability to see a structure rather than its components. Your credentials, he said, after 3 minutes. Yes. Used for 19 unauthorized accesses in the last 6 weeks. All between 2 and 4 a.m. He paused. All routed through a terminal in the building's network operations center. Do you know who has access to that? She did know. The list was short. Building IT. Her CSO. Warren Briggs. She sat down on the edge of the chair across the desk. Not because she was tired. Because the specific weight of understanding something you don't want to understand requires a surface to press against. He sent me a message tonight, she said, about diagnostics. Timing you out, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. Creating a window to complete the access cycle and transfer whatever he's been compiling. He stood. We need to move. If he's monitoring remotely and realizes someone responded to your call, he may accelerate. The police are coming. In approximately 6 minutes. Yes. But whoever he has in the building isn't going to wait for the police. He was moving toward the door. There's a service stairwell on the north end of the floor. It's not on the compromised camera grid. We're going to use it. She stood. I don't, she started. I know, he said. Come on. She followed him. Later, she would not be entirely able to explain why. She had spent 15 years building a life in which she did not follow. She gave direction. She evaluated options. She made decisions from positions of information and leverage. She did not move through service corridors behind strange men on the instructions of strangers. And yet, there was something in the way he moved that was not performance. He did not look back to see if she was keeping up. He did not narrate what he was doing or explain himself or manage her. He just moved, and the movement was so obviously purposeful, and so obviously the right movement, that following it felt less like trust and more like physics. They went down 4 floors via the service stairs, narrow and industrial-smelling, lit by fluorescent strips, and he stopped at the 39th floor landing, listening. She listened too. Somewhere above them, an elevator moving. "Service elevator," he said. "Too fast for residential." Someone using override. He opened the landing door a crack. A hallway. Empty. "Conference room 3 doors down on the left," he said. "Serviced by the building's secondary network, separate from the compromised grid." "How do you know that?" "Building schematics are public record. I looked them up on the way over." She stared at him. "In 12 minutes. I read quickly." He held the door open. "Go." The conference room was dark and smelled of dry erase markers and recycled air. He found the panel in the corner and did something she couldn't entirely follow that made the room's secondary network connection live without triggering the main building system. Then he sat on the edge of the conference table and made a call on his phone that lasted 45 seconds and consisted almost entirely of the other person talking while Daniel listened and said, twice, "Got it." When he hung up, he said, "My contact pulled the access logs from the external side. Whoever is using your credentials has been building a parallel data set, financial records, contractual communications, your board correspondence for the last 18 months. It's not a theft. It's a case file." She sat across the table. "For what?" "For a hostile acquisition filing." He watched her face. "If someone presents regulatory bodies with evidence that you've been accessing restricted financial data outside approved channels, which is exactly what these access logs look like, they can initiate a forced review of your executive standing. In the middle of a review, a competing board faction can call a vote," she said. "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. The rain pressed against the narrow conference room window. Below, somewhere, she could see the peripheral red-blue pulse of what were probably the police cruisers she had called. "Warren has been with the company 6 years, she said. "He may not be acting alone. The board meeting is Thursday." She heard her own voice come out flat and analytical, the way she sounded in crisis, which she had always considered a strength and now felt like a warning. "There's a secondary acquisition proposal from Montcrest Capital. Warren has been in the working group advising on it." Daniel looked at her steadily. "It's not a breach," she said. "It's a takeover." "Yes," he said. Lily's face appeared on his phone. He picked it up without ceremony, and his voice changed, not dramatically, not obviously, but she heard it shift, a frequency alteration, something warming by several degrees. "Hey, Bug, you're supposed to be asleep." A child's voice, slightly fuzzy with sleep and the residual rough quality of a fading cold. "Where are you, Dad?" "Helping someone," he said. "Mrs. Petrov is across the hall. I'll be home soon. Drink your water." "Is the person okay?" He glanced at Elena. The glance was brief and held no particular message, but she felt, for a strange moment, included in something. "Getting there," he said. "Sleep." He ended the call and set the phone on the table, and his face resettled into its usual geography, composed, watchful, giving away nothing. "How old?" Elena asked. 8. "She's sick?" "Fever. Mild." He picked up his phone and stood. "We need to access the building's security control junction on 42. There's a physical override panel I can use to lock Warren's access credentials building-wide, not just here, but from every point he could use to cover his tracks. And then you call your board chair tonight." "Not tomorrow. Tonight." He moved toward the door. Whatever Briggs and Montcrest were planning, they needed the data transfer to complete before you could document the access pattern. If we freeze his credentials and preserve the actual logs, the story the data tells reverses. She stood. "He'll know." "Yes, which means we need to move before he does." He paused at the door. "Can you access your board chair's emergency line?" "I wrote it myself," she said. "Yes. Call from my phone. Don't use yours." He held it out. She looked at it. A regular phone, not new, with a small crack in the bottom corner of the screen, and a photo of a red-haired child visible through the cracked case. She took it. The building's security control junction looked like an electrical closet trying to be a data center and succeeding at neither. Rack-mounted servers, a tangle of Ethernet that suggested periodic good intentions never followed through, and a wall panel that Daniel stood in front of for approximately 20 seconds before he found what he was looking for. "This is going to take 4 minutes," he said. "Tell me when your board chair picks up." She called. The phone rang 6 times. Then, "This is Harmon. Elena, it's 1:30 in the morning." "I know," she said. "Listen to me carefully." Richard Harmon was 71 years old, had run 3 Fortune 500 companies before retiring to a board advisory role, and had the specific quality of very experienced people. He could hear urgency without needing it performed. He listened to 3 minutes of her summary without interrupting. "You're certain about Briggs," he said. "I have the access logs. I have the routing data. I have hold on." She looked at Daniel, who had not turned around. "Tell him to look at the Montcrest correspondence files from the last 6 weeks, Daniel said to the wall. "Specifically, the metadata. Editing timestamps will show files being modified from within the Callaway Ward network after hours." She relayed this. Harmon was quiet. Then, "Elena, I need you to send me everything you have. In the next 10 minutes. I'll need a secure channel. Use mine." He gave her an address. "I'm calling Marcus." Marcus Ellingsworth was the company's outside counsel, old, methodical, constitutionally incapable of panic, which was exactly what she needed. "Don't go to the office tonight. Don't go home either." "I know," she said. She ended the call and held out Daniel's phone. He took it without turning fully around, still working on the panel. "Board chair," she said. "Good." He did something with a physical key and 2 switches that produced a soft electronic sound, like a lock engaging. Credentials frozen. He'll have 15 seconds of indication before the system flags him as a revoked user. He closed the panel. He'll know something's wrong. "Good," she said. He turned. For a moment, they stood in the cramped space between the server rack and the door, closer than they had been in the conference room, and she was aware again of the particular quality of his stillness, the sense that he was taking up exactly the space he needed and not any more. "Police are still in the lobby," he said. "You should go down and give a statement." "What about you?" "I'll use the service exit." She looked at him. "You don't want to be in the report." "I'd rather not be in the report." She understood this the way she understood many things that were communicated without being said. He had built a careful, quiet life, and he did not want it complicated by the paper trail of events that were about to become very visible. "All right," she said. They went back up the service stairs to the 39th floor and parted ways him to the north stairwell, her to the elevator bank. At the corner where the corridor divided, she stopped. "Hayes." He stopped, turned slightly. "Your daughter asked if I was okay." She heard how strange the sentence was as she said it. "She doesn't know me." He was quiet for a moment. "Lily asks if people are okay." "It's a habit. A good one." He looked at her. In the flat fluorescent light of the service corridor, she couldn't read his expression precisely, but she could see its texture, something thoughtful, and something, beneath that she didn't have a word for yet. "Go," he said. "The officers are waiting." She went. What followed was the architecture of consequence. Warren Briggs's credentials flagged the building system at 1:38 a.m. He was at home, 3 miles away, when his access attempt was rejected, and the rejection triggered an alert that had been rerouted by Daniel's work in the control junction, not to Warren's personal security console, where he could have managed it, but to the building's central log, which was now being reviewed by a very awake Richard Harmon and his very awake legal team. The police statement took 40 minutes. Elena was precise and factual, which she was good at, and declined to speculate, which she was also good at, and gave them everything they needed and nothing they didn't. Marcus Ellingsworth arrived at 3 a.m. in a car that probably cost less than Elena's conference table and a coat that definitely cost more. He reviewed the access logs with the expression of a man reading a bedtime story he had always known would end this way. The metadata on the Montcrest files is damning, he said. Two members of Briggs's working group also have after-hours edits. The pattern is clear. He looked at Elena, clear enough that I'd recommend presenting it to the SEC before Thursday. Before Thursday, she said. Yes, by 4 a.m., she was in Harmon's home office with 3 lawyers and a forensic accountant who had been on a video call with his pajama collar visible above his jacket. By 6 a.m., the picture was complete. Warren Briggs had been working with the Montcrest acquisition team for 8 months. The plan was elegant. In its way, manufacture regulatory concern through fabricated access logs, trigger a forced review of Elena's executive standing, create the board instability necessary for Montcrest's faction to call a confidence vote while she was suspended pending investigation. It would have worked. 6 weeks ago, even 2 weeks ago, it would have worked. It did not work because at 1:03 a.m., a woman who never asked for help had called a number she didn't recognize, and a man who had turned away from this world had answered, and had made a calculation in the length of one ring that the person on the other end of the line needed what he had. 3 weeks later, Elena Ward's life looked different in the ways that mattered. The company's internal security framework had been rebuilt from the ground up, with oversight mechanisms that no single individual could circumvent. Warren Briggs was facing a federal investigation with all the attendant discomfort of a person who had believed himself too essential to be removed. 2 members of his working group had resigned. One had begun cooperating with investigators. The Montcrest acquisition proposal had been quietly withdrawn. Elena had restructured the board's Security Advisory Committee to include independent technical oversight. She had promoted 3 people from her internal team who had long been doing critical work without commensurate recognition. She had, for the first time since founding the company, delegated the quarterly security review to a team rather than reviewing it alone. She told herself these were operational decisions. They were. They were also something else. She had Richard Harmon's number in her phone, and she had used it twice since that night, for reasons unrelated to crisis. She had called her sister, whom she had not called in 4 months, and they had talked for 2 hours about nothing particular. She had started leaving the office before 8. She had not been able to stop thinking about a service corridor, fluorescent light, and a man who had shown up in 12 minutes and then disappeared before the paperwork. She found his address through the building's lobby records, which listed all verified visitors that night. She went on a Saturday morning, because Saturday mornings seemed like the right time for things that weren't business. The building was 11 blocks north and 49 floors down, and it was everything her building wasn't. Lived in, slightly worn, warm, with the ordinary evidence of people who lived in it rather than inhabited it. The elevator was slow. The hallway carpet was the particular pattern of the 1980s, geometric and faded, and completely without pretension. She knocked on apartment 4C. The door opened before she had finished the second knock, which meant someone had been near it. And the someone was not Daniel Hayes. She was small and red-haired and 8 years old, with the evaluating expression of a child who took strangers seriously, and she looked at Elena for a long moment, with very steady brown eyes that were exactly her father's. "Hi," said the child. "Hi," said Elena. I'm looking for Mr. Hayes." "Dad!" the child called over her shoulder. Then, to Elena, with polite and genuine curiosity, "Are you the lady from the phone?" Elena opened her mouth. "The lady Dad helped," the child continued, helpfully. "He said he helped someone." "Are you her?" "Yes," Elena said. The child, Lily, she was almost certain, considered this with the same evaluating expression. "He didn't tell me a lot about it," Lily said. "He doesn't tell me about stuff when it's serious. But he said the person was okay." "I am?" Elena said. "I'm okay." Lily nodded, apparently satisfied with this. And then Daniel was in the hallway behind her, wearing a gray sweater, and looking at Elena with an expression she had learned to read in the past 3 weeks of thinking about it, neither surprised nor unsurprised. Simply present. "Lily, go finish your eggs," he said. They're done, Lily said. I turned the burner off and everything. But she went, casting one last look over her shoulder. Daniel leaned against the doorframe. Miss Ward, he said. Elena, she said. He was quiet. I wanted to say thank you, she said. Properly. Not through an envelope or a wire transfer, or I tried those. Your number is disconnected. I changed it. I noticed. She looked at him. I'm not here to offer you anything. I'm not here to complicate your life. I just... She stopped. She was not accustomed to being imprecise. I wanted you to know that what you did, that it mattered. Not just the outcome, the way you did it. She paused. You didn't need to know why I was in danger to help me. You just helped. He looked at her for a long moment. Come in, he said. Lily made more eggs than she can eat. She looked at him. You don't have to. I know, he said. Come in. The apartment was exactly what she'd expected, and not at all what she'd expected. It was small. The way apartments in this city were small when the person living in them had spent their money on things other than space. But it was not cramped. It had the density of a place lived in carefully, where each thing was in its position because someone had thought about it. Lily's drawings were on the refrigerator in layers, the oldest just visible at the edges of the newest. There was a bookshelf beside the window with books shelved spine out except for a few facing forward, which she suspected were Lily's. A coffee table, with a repair to one leg that had been done precisely and with obvious care. The kitchen smelled like butter and toast, and the specific warmth of a place that had been occupied all morning. Lily was at the kitchen table, 8 years old and matter of fact, and she watched Elena the way children watch things they've decided to be interested in openly, without the social management adults apply to their curiosity. Do you like hot sauce? Lily asked, as Elena sat down. I don't know, Elena said honestly. Lily considered this answer with visible respect. That's a good answer, she said. Most people just say yes or no. Daniel put a plate in front of her without asking. Scrambled eggs, toast, half a sliced orange, arranged with the specific neatness of a person who did small things with attention. She looked at it. She could not, for a moment, remember the last time someone had put food in front of her without being paid to do it. Thank you, she said. He sat across from her with his own coffee and the Saturday paper, which he opened and did not perform reading. He actually read it, comfortable in the silence, the way people are comfortable in silence when they don't need it filled. Your company is stable, he said, without looking up. I saw the news. Yes, yes. She ate a forkful of eggs. They were good. Simple. The kind of food that tasted like someone cared about the eating of it. I made some changes. He looked up now. Better ones, she said. Structural. The security framework was, I'd built it around myself, around controlling it, which made it fragile. She paused. You pointed that out, without saying it. I didn't point anything out, he said. No, that's why it landed. He was quiet, looking at her across the small kitchen table in the morning light coming through the window above the sink. The city sounds soft below them. Lily was drawing something with a red crayon, apparently having decided the adults could manage on their own. You gave up a lot, Elena said. Not an accusation, an observation. That work. Your career. I gave up some things, got others. Do you regret it? He looked at Lily. The look was brief and contained no performance. It was just a man looking at his child, the way people look at the things they've built their lives around. No, he said. She picked up the half orange, put it down, picked up her coffee. I don't know how to do this, she said. I don't mean this specifically. I mean I don't know how to be in spaces like this. Small spaces, where things are not arranged. She looked at the refrigerator, the layered drawings, where it's all just sitting there. He looked at her. You're in it, he said. That's usually the hard part. Outside, the rain from 3 weeks ago was entirely gone. The morning light was early May light, the pale gold of a city deciding to be warm again. And it came through the window and lay across the table between them, like something being offered. Lily looked up from her drawing. "Is your building still broken?" she asked Elena. "It's fixed now," Elena said. "Good," Lily said, apparently satisfied, and went back to her drawing. Elena looked at Daniel. He was watching her with that steady, unhurried attention, the same attention he had used in the service corridor, in the conference room. All the careful, occupied silences of a night that had reorganized something she hadn't known needed reorganizing. "I'm not good at this," she said again, quietly. "Nobody is, at the start," he said. The coffee was hot. The eggs were good. Lily was drawing what appeared to be, on closer inspection, a dragon with a very cheerful expression. The city moved below them in its ordinary Saturday rhythms. Unhurried and completely indifferent, Elena Ward had spent 15 years building the perfect high-rise architecture of a life no one could touch, and sitting in a small kitchen on the 4th floor with a cold cup of coffee and a plate of someone else's eggs, she felt, for the first time in longer than she could clearly remember, the specific quiet of a place where she was not performing anything at all. Outside, the light was warm. She stayed for breakfast. She did not stay because of what had happened 3 weeks ago, or because she owed him something, or because gratitude required this specific expression. She stayed because the eggs were good and the coffee was hot, and across the table a man was reading his newspaper, and a child was drawing a dragon, and no one was asking her to be anything in particular. That was, she thought, the thing she had not understood about safety. She had thought it was something you built, something you maintained through vigilance and architecture and the careful management of access. She had thought it was something that could be perfected if you spent enough money and enough time. She had been wrong. It was not something you built. It was something that existed, briefly and imperfectly, in the ordinary arrangement of honest people in honest spaces, in the unremarkable morning light of a city, going about its business below a window, where no one was particularly important, and everyone was completely real. The dragon Lily was drawing had, upon further inspection, 3 heads. Each head wore a different hat. Elena picked up her coffee. For the first time in 15 years, she was exactly where she was,